Why I believe we should defend children, look after children, and why it's not happening today. The reason it's not happening today, as much as it should do, like in every single household, is because of immaturity. When you see a child fight with another child, like in a sandpit, the big child will hit the little child, seeing no wrong in it. So, bully behaviour is absolutely fine in childish thinking, in immature thinking. So, when people grow up physically as adults but don't grow up mentally into maturity, they're immature and they act immature. So, hurting children is fine to them. And they don't have love and compassion for the child because they still have the immaturity and the immature behaviour as an adult. I was at a how should I put it? I was at a security. I was secure. Part of my job, I was going to a place, and there was a jeep full of a pickup truck full of Maori guys in it and Doug guys, and they were yelling. I pulled over because it was private land, and I said, "You're not really supposed to be here." And they started yelling abuse at me. This is like at about 10 o'clock at night, and they were very threatening, and they said they were going to get me and all this, and I just said, and I went down to check the gate further down, and then come back up, and I was going to ask them to leave. And when I went down, I was in a trapped position, which means if they'd have come down, they could have all attacked me. And I went down to the bottom. I wasn't scared in the slightest. It didn't worry me. I I came back up, and before I got back up, they were extremely yelling at all sorts of threatening obscenities and like. By the time I got up there, they were gone, and I mentioned it to my boss, who was an ex-policeman, and he said it's people have a feeling that they have a right to something. There's a word for it, but it's escaped me. And they think that they have a right, so they figure that because they were here before the white people, therefore they have a right to certain land. And even if they don't own it, and if you ask them to leave, they get very upset. Adults who are immature and act in an immature manner, they will treat children, push children aside so that they can have what they believe by right is theirs. Uh, when you grow up in a mature manner, you put away childish things. When immature people grow up, they don't put away childish things. They still, your child, you have birthday parties. Well, they grow up and they have wild parties, drinking parties. When you're a child, you'll accept silly, stupid behaviour. You think that. I remember going to the library one day here in Takaroa, and there was a group of children, the small children, with a teacher, and the teacher mentioned bottoms, and the children all roared in laughter. They thought it was so funny, and you see, that's the immature behaviour that children have. As you mature, you're supposed to ignore that stuff. As adults today, because the masses are immature, they don't see crude nudity as offensive. They see it as funny. And they don't see crude jokes or foul language as offensive or wrong. And so they do it in front of the children. And it's the way society's become developed. It's not any particular person's fault. You can't. I had a mailing Delphi programming group in 2001, and there was about over 2,500 people worldwide on it. And a guy posted foul language infringement, and I deleted his foul language, and he abused me, called me a fascist pig, because we had the ability to go and see their language, see their posts before they posted them, and we could edit out the bad language. And he got really angry at me. And then there was an Australian guy who did it, and I edited out his bad language, and he got so angry. He said, "At home, my children swear. I swear, it's how we live. It's normal life in Australia." And he said, "There's something wrong with you. We can't live like that and use the language we use in at home." And I said, "There's children that use this group, and I don't want the children to. Um, I want the children to use it without being offended or without bad language being on the group for the children, because high schools and that we're using the group." And I got a lot of abuse over it, but I stuck to my guns. It didn't change my mind at all. And some of them threatened me quite viciously, but this life. I believe we should bring our children up maturely, and it's kind of like passing wind. My father used to think it was the funniest thing in the world when he did. He'd sit there roaring with hysterics and making jokes, and I just stare at him and say, "Am I in a madhouse?" I couldn't understand why he was so immature over a normal body function. Then, as I grew up, and as a teenager, went to high school, and people would crack over if someone did it, and they were like freaking out, and I'd be like, "Oh." In some occasions, it seemed funny. But when I brought up my children here, from 1997 to around 2014, if someone passed a wind, we just ignored it and got on with the day. Um, it wasn't something that was funny, And so toilet humor. I hate toilet humor with a vengeance. It's foul, it's disgusting, it's gross, and therefore children shouldn't be exposed to stuff that's going to keep them immature. They shouldn't be exposed to TV. They shouldn't be exposed to people who are immature, or who, in my book, it would be people who are conformists to society, because then they'll just train your children to be conformists to society. There's nothing wrong with doing what everyone else is doing to a degree, as long as it doesn't hurt your health. But the other point is it you don't want others. You want to have a brain that is capable of thinking out of the square, which means society sets you with this perfect square. Like when we die. This came out from about 2008 or 2007. I had a notebook and I'd write everything I put down, and it was across from Countdown to Town. And there's the little eating area. And I was sitting there at a table, and it popped into my head everything was perfect in the so-called perfect world. I was watching the people in their cars coming out of the supermarket, driving up and down the street, the police station, the cinema, and I was thinking to myself how people like everything wrapped up neat and tidy, and then I thought of death, and I thought, yes, even when we die, we get an expensive coffin, put the dead body, it's just going to decompose in the perfect coffin, wrap it up nice and neat with a gold locks or latches and gold handles. Take them, put them in the ground, put them in the perfectly square cut 6 foot deep hole. Put them in there, cover them over with dirt, cover the top, and then put a perfect, concrete covering over it with a headstone. Everything has to be like that, and it's kind of you want people that think out of the square, and instead of conforming to the so-called perfect world. And you want your children to think out of the square. You want them to be able to they've got all these things about teaching children drugs, teaching children sex, teaching children how sexual manipulation, teaching children all this stuff, so that children won't be sexually molested, or they'd see the signs before it happened. But if we just teach our children to be aware of things that were abnormal, And if we explain that there are adults out in the world that do not function mentally as they should, and they function immaturely, then it would be seen that the child will have the thinking capacity to just think what this adult's trying to get them to do is wrong. They will trust their senses, their instincts. They'll say, "This is wrong. I know this is wrong." And no matter what the adult says to them, and if the adult gives them lollies or whatever to try and entice them, the child will just back off and say, "No, thank you. I don't want that." In religious terms, it is said that the child is your God's child. We're given children on loan so that we can bring them up in a good way to be good in the world and have enjoyable, happy lives. You can't have an enjoyable, happy life if you're immature. You know, it just doesn't work that way. In Ron Howard and Clint Howard's book, they told of how their father took them to the little kids. Like when Clint did Gentle Ben, which was the big black bear, he was a little child of, I think, about 5. And so his father would sit him down the night before and he would go through the script and explain to his son what the script wanted him to do, what feelings the script wanted. And he would go into great detail of finding how to get those feelings out of his son. Then the next day, when the son did the acting, he would call on what the feelings his father brought about him the night before, and they'd come out in the program. And this is why Gentle Ben and the Andy Griffith Show with Ron Howard in it, and the other one with Clint Howard in it, were so successful. The children acting were, their father was always at their side. Sometimes he got parts in the movies or the programs they did. He wanted to be a movie star himself, and he basically gave up his whole career to help his 2 sons with their careers. And often he got parts in the movies, he got extra money for helping them out and stuff like that. But he didn't make a fraction of the money Ron and Clint made as little children. They made a huge amount of money. And so what we want basically with a child is, my views as a father were, I had a child and I had this wonderful opportunity to bring this child up to be a wonderful person. I didn't know anything about immaturity, about society. And one day, my oldest daughter was caught swearing, and I was shocked. I was absolutely. The woman, the mother-in-law, who never liked me, was making fun of me in front of other people because she said my 1.5-year-old daughter, maybe 2, said a swear word. I never heard it, but it made me very conscious of my language at the time. So I vowed to give up swearing. And I started realizing that your life changes when you have a child, and it should change. You should put away immature feelings, thoughts, and ways, and become a different person because you're now responsible for the children. And that's how I saw it. And I wanted to put it away. It's another reason for putting away drinking, partying, bad language, bad behavior. And also, you start screening out your friends. You don't want the ones that are single that come up and cause trouble and speak with bad language because you've given it up. You don't want your kids to be exposed to it. So what you do is you limit the exposure of immaturity and foolishness to your children and try to allow them to flow with their natural growing ways. Instead of, I was telling, I've got a friend, she's going to homeschool her children, and I was saying to her that from 5 to, or 0 to, say 12 years old, schooling is unnatural. It's not wrong, but it's writing with a pencil is unnatural. Doing mathematics and all that, you do the basics, but anything further than the basics is unnatural because the child mind still wants to play and have fun and learn by outdoor activities and physical interactions with other people, the world. It's not the child is learning how to interact with other human beings. It's learning how to be responsible. It's learning how to care. It's learning how to trust its own emotions. It's learning how to deal with those emotions and how to respond to events that happen around the home, and especially things like an animal dying and they don't want to deal with it, but they have to. And the parent's job is to help the child let the emotions out and cry, and to release tension and darkness that could build inside the child. Today, with the immature parents, they didn't know how to do any of that. And so the children grow up immature with a mind full of maths, science, English, and academic learning, but an extreme lack of life learning. And so I sort of knew this stuff, but I didn't know it. I couldn't pinpoint it in my head, or I couldn't say it like I can now. So I changed a lot of my life. And when my wife in 1997, when she moved back after a 6 year break, it was her that suggested homeschooling. And I'd heard of it, and I thought people said it was weird. And only weird people homeschool. But I thought, oh, well, seems like a good idea. And I didn't like schooling. Tracy and Rachel had been through with two schools, and the stuff they'd gone through, just the bullying and the silly behaviour, and I didn't like it. So I said, oh, well, okay, we'll do that. And so we homeschooled the children. I ended up homeschooling them without even, it just sort of seemed my natural place. And I got more and more involved in their schoolwork and in their studies and in the things that they did. And I started, like I was telling this woman yesterday, I said, find all the things, the arts and the crafts and the things you wanted to do as a child. She was trying to figure out how she could teach them. And I said, find the things that you always wanted to know and always wanted to do, and then teach them to the children. I explained to her how I like to do. I always wanted as a child to do model planes, and I couldn't do them because my parents didn't care. They were spending money on drugs and booze or whatever, or trying to get by, and so they didn't have any desire to get me anything like that. So I'd go. We had a model shop here in the when I was a child, and I used to walk through Tokoroa to the model shop, and I used to just dream. And I never ever got a model ever. And so, as a homeschooler father, I brought models for me and my kids, and we all sat down and built planes and whatever else, And it was part of the experience, part of the fun, and it was just amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and the children thoroughly enjoyed it. Instead of buying them things that I never had as a child, like toys and stuff, I got them experiences that I never had. If there's places I wanted to go, I hadn't been to, and the things I'd sit there and say, as a child, I wished I'd done such and such instead of being stuck in a classroom doing schoolwork. So I said to my kids, let's go and do that. And we did nature stuff, nature walks, collected nature stuff from nature and did classes on them and all that sort of stuff. And then one thing I always wanted to learn was how to paint. And so we did watercolors, acrylics, and oils. Well, we didn't do oils, only Rachel did oils. I never got that far with oils. And then we went on to other arts and crafts, other writing skills. Some of the kids did calligraphy. I just got them involved in a whole lot of things so that they could figure out when they grew older what it is they wanted to do and what it is they wanted to be, what it is they might want as a hobby. And so they could recall those things and easily use them in their own experiences with their own children if they chose to homeschool their children. My view also always was from the beginning is when they leave the home, they go. Whatever they become after they've left home is up to them. If they never want to contact me again, that's fine. If they want to contact me, that's fine. If they want to be in my life, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine. The point is you bring them to that level, and then let them go, and just let them be the people they want to be, and leave it up to them. I've never liked when I was insecure and married and had girlfriends. I used to chase my girlfriends because I was terrified of being alone. Now, as a more mature and adult, I don't believe in that in the slightest. It occurred to me one day, what's the point of keeping somebody that's forced? So the same attitude should be with our children. We should say, once they've left home, let them do what they want to do. You might contact them once in a while for stuff. I rang Grace up yesterday to help this woman out because this woman wants to start homeschooling. And Grace has only started homeschooling in the last 3 or 4 years, so you should be able to help her out. And there's been a big growth in homeschooling in New Zealand due to COVID and people not liking the way the children are turning out academically, and also a lot of people are not liking the way the government is, doing things. So it's got a funny text come up on my phone. Anyway, so about redeeming offers for something, maybe Vodafone or extra. Um, yeah, Osmark. So anyway, the whole idea of, for me, of bringing up children is to help mold their minds, let them grow freely, let them become what they want to become on their own terms, being pushed, without being pushed or pressured or guided into something or groomed into something. Let them do it themselves. Let them figure out who they want to be themselves. And then when they become teenagers, let them choose. They've got so many years to re-choose. I've read so many biographies of people who studied at university by the age of 18, 19, had their whole future mapped out, had all these degrees, got in their 20s. They were fully educated to be a doctor or a nurse or whatever. And 5, 10 years later, they're completely the opposite. They're a writer or they're a singer or they're. So it's not important what you do with your education in those years. And it's you can change your mind so often and frequently and realize, now this isn't what I want to do. I've got so many books I've read of people studying, getting halfway through university and thinking, this isn't it. I don't want to do this anymore. And they go and do something completely different. And education does help them in other areas. Dale Carnegie studied writing writing novels, and he did a course. In the end, he didn't have the ability, imagination to write novels, but he went on to write his very famous motivation books. And the writing skills he learned years before came in handy. So sometimes the stuff you do today can help you in a different way in the future, completely different from what you're doing today. But it sets you on the path to make it easier and you're better at what you're doing. Um, so, and the other thing about bringing up children and bringing them up right so they become mature adults is they are the future. It's just, even if you're not doing it for yourself, they say treat your children well or they'll put you on a rest home. Even if you are treat um, treat your do it as an unselfish thing. Reach out, bring your children up so that they. Um, I'm thinking. I have this issue where I think faster than I talk, and my talk slows down, and so I have issues getting things out. So it might seem like that. If we unselfishly bring up our children with our heart to become the best that they can be as human beings, then as adults, they can be the people that can change the world for the better. But they can't do that. I mean, do you just want to bring up a pisshead or a motorhead or a drunk or an alcoholic or a druggie? or somebody goes out sleeping with heaps of people. Your child's soul in life is worth so much more. So if we bring them up in such a way that they can choose, but they are mature, they know about all the bad things in the world, uh, but that's to help them avoid them. And they know about all the good things and the opportunities they can take. They know about natural living because they are a part of nature. They know about love and the value of marrying someone who will stay with them forever, for throughout their life, someone who really um, complement them, each other, can draw on each other's strengths and weaknesses and help each other out. And then they can go on and they can be useful in the community. If there's committees and the like, they can be part of those things as mature people and as strong-willed, courageous people, and they're not afraid to take on a challenge. To take, you know, and they are strong enough mentally that when they see something and they say, "Nah, it's not right," and I'm not agreeing with that, and the whole town agrees with it. No, no, that's not right. The masses have just been fooled. I will enlighten them, and it might be a 20-year fight, but fights like that are worth it. And the thing here is if you bring up children who are willing to do those 20-year fights, gee, your child can be one of the ones, like the likes of fluoride, your child could be one of the ones in there say, fluoride's great, fluoride's great. But water was perfect in the first place. It doesn't need fluoride. And no, neither do teeth. So you can be one of the conformers. You can bring your child up to be a conformer who accepts everything told to them, obeys the authorities blindly, obeys the education system, obeys the government, obeys everything they're told they must do, and they will be the perfect conforming citizen. Or you can bring up someone who's a thinker, who challenges what they're told, who doesn't sit down and bow down and do as they're told. You know, sits there and says, if they believe that something's not right, then they don't follow it. You got to remember when Anne Frank was hunted down and taken away as a child to be murdered, that was the law in Germany at that time. You would have round up Jews, no matter what age, take them away and kill them. That was the law. And in America, slavery was the law. Actually, in all countries, it's slavery. And a lot of places all around the world, I think the last was probably New Guinea, cannibalism was the accepted practice. You killed someone and you ate them. You, and I mean, when I say the accepted practice, it was accepted by the whole tribe or the whole country. See what I'm getting at? If we bring our children up to be thinkers, they're the ones who start the ball going to break these unhealthy, unfruitful, immature, foolish practices of humankind. And they can make a wonderful difference. Another thing is that they can be a light in the community, a connection with God, a connection with life, with nature, and they can show people a better loving way. And their marriages, the love between them, is a good example to their own children and to the greater community. So I think it's extremely important that we bring our children up well, and we bring them up fully with their heart and soul. And every day we get up concerned, and to a small degree, how the day's going to be. We don't overprotect them, but we do protect them. I always ran with my children to school, or walked, or we took the car. Very seldom did I let them walk home or go to school on their own, which was probably what meeting would say was overprotectiveness. But I used to get up in the morning to get bread in the morning. One of the reasons was to wake myself up for homeschooling. And one of the reasons was that we were poor and we needed bread anyway, not only to get one loaf a day, but it was an excuse to get up. When I used to jog with the kids to school or walk with them to school and go and pick them up and bring them home, it was a way to bring what is it a pattern to my life, a planned pattern. So I would just say, get up, get the kids. It's 3 o'clock. Or go whatever I was doing. I'd dig in the garden. I'd drop that and go and get the kids, bring them home, and then I'd include the children in everything I did if I was in the gardens. They'd come out and they'd help me. Or we'd do normally after school we'd do about half an hour to an hour of homework, or we'd just go over. I'd say to the children, like, well, you have trouble with anything today? And they'd say, oh, I sat with algebra. Then I'd go through them over with algebra and help them. So the next day when they went to school, often they were called geniuses, or way ahead of their classmates, because they were struggling the day before, and the next day they were doing really well. So it was my way of giving them that extra boost and helping them out. So homeschooling was a natural for me. It was just a natural. And I cared so much and wanted to be there to put my input into their schooling and give my personal touch to help them grow into maturity. And they're pretty good kids now. So, and if I don't hear from one of them for 2, 3 years, that's fine, because they're doing whatever it is they want to do that makes their life better. And then I'll hear from them, and then they'll tell me all about whatever's happened, or they'll randomly turn up, which is what they tend to do, and I get to spend a day with them and stuff like that, or a week, if they stay. So it's important anyway. I'll leave it at that, but I just want to get across the end goal should be a mature, decent, strong willed, courageous human being that is capable of denying themselves all horrible temptations of society and welcoming all the natural gifts that the world and the planet has to give them, especially love. God bless you.